Hello, members. This is Tom Morrison coming to you live from not Jacksonville, Florida, but now Nashville, Tennessee, where MTI now lives and breathes the heat treating industry. So we're so excited that y'all are here, and we're here to talk about technical specifications. Lots happening in that world, especially with 2750. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But just for any of you that want to submit questions or comments or actually answer some questions that are going on in the comment line, if you hover down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a little thing that says chat. Click that, and the box to the right should pop up, and you can see where it says type message here. Type in your comments, your questions, or anything you'd like to chime in. We'd love to see you get engaged in this conversation. Ask our panelists questions or everything. So a couple things before we get started. So MTI has some exciting things going on right now. One of the biggest is, as I just said, we moved this past week our national offices to Nashville, Tennessee. It gives us a great central location to really be able to serve our members better and help us be closer to where we have Furnaces North America in Louisville and Nashville and Indianapolis when it's in one of those three cities. So great things going on. Another big happening is our MTI Safety Committee is going to be working on some key documents in the areas of arc flash, safety, elevation, and lockout tagout over the course of the next few months. It's going to have some key documents that you're going to want to put in tune with your safety programs and your companies, and we should hopefully be seeing some headway on that in the next quarter. The third one is our next generation task force. MTI, the last 6 to 8 months, has developed a couple of really nice recruitment videos for recruiting the next generation of workers, any workers into the heat treat industry. We have a new job board that's going to be coming out. That's going to be where you can list internships, not jobs, but internships. So when the young people go out there to our website and click on career opportunities, they can see a place where they can come get their internships done and provide you some new young workforce. So lots of good things that this task force is going to pull together and build a nice strategy for us to help generate that next generation of workers into your company. So we're excited about that. Just 2 meetings going on next year that are the big ones we do. In April, we have the spring meeting from the 27th to the 29th in Sonoma, California, wine country. So if you're eligible to come and would love to come to that, don't miss that meeting. We're working on the education committee is working right now on the content that's going to be there. It's going to be outstanding. And then Furnaces North America, probably over 1,800 people are going to be there from September 30th to October 2nd. About 170 of the top manufacturers where you can see everything from furnace equipment, accessories, control sensors, you name it, you'll see it there at Furnaces North America in one place. Put September 30th to October 2nd on your calendar. And if you can, go out to furnacesnorthamerica.com and you'll be able to see everything in the world, the hotel, registration coming out in April. Everything you want to know about it will be there, so don't miss it. So right now, let's get into the heat of the matter, which is technical specifications. We have our 3 people who are highly engaged in all these committees, get ready to just deliver some great news today and eye-opening news in some areas. So we'll start at the top left. Call your name and just give everybody, for those that have not listened to us before, guys, just tell about 30 seconds who you are and what your engagement in the technical process. So Bob Ferry, let's start with you.
Okay, I'm Bob Ferry. I'm with FPM Heat Treating and certainly involved in the AIAG CQI9 committee, as well as Nadcap, and I do review some AMS specifications.
So okay. Bob Peters.
Hi, Robert Peters. I'm a consultant. I also sat on the Nadcap committee, the additive manufacturing in AMEC, and I have been involved in aerospace for a very, very long time.
Yes, we appreciate your work you do with us, Robert. So Ed?
Ed Engelhard. I'm Vice President of Corporate Quality, Solar Atmospheres, and active on ASTM and Nadcap. And of late, I've signed on to the AMEC committee at SAE as well.
Well, we're very excited about that, Ed, because the gray hairs are moving out. We need some young ones in there, so we're glad you stepped into that young role to be on the AMEC committee. So, hey, let's jump into it. So, Bob Ferry, I know you're highly active in CQI9. I know there's some slight updates going on there. So tell this group on the technical side what's going on in CQI9.
Okay, so what's really good is the CQI9 document now has been sent back to management, and actually it's sent out for stakeholder review as revision 4. So we're going to see what the comments are from the stakeholders on this document that we've put together, and we've got a meeting coming up in January where we're going to review all these comments and see what needs to be incorporated back into the document. But this is kind of like the final review when you're going through this this document and this whole procedure. It's been a long time coming. We're the members of the committee, you know, we're we're getting tired, but
Right.
But it is coming through, and I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a good document coming out. So once we get the comments addressed in January, February timeframe, I think you're going to be able to see this thing very shortly in 2020, like hopefully the first quarter.
So, and Bob, like when it comes out, how long do people have, is it an immediate, or how long does people have to bring themselves into compliance?
Typically, they're going to give you 6 months. And I know on some of the, one of the items, like if you have to change instrumentation in order to be compliant, they typically give you a year or two to get your instruments in the state that they want you to have them in. Like, for example, getting away from analog instruments and going to digital.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a requirement, but they're strongly recommending that you do that. And they're going to give you a couple of years to generate the capital to be able to do that
Right.
on your equipment. So it's nothing, I don't think, that is unreasonable. I think it gives us plenty of time to plan for these things, and you know, it's for the betterment of the process and the equipment as well.
So people that have questions on when that hits the market, I mean, what's the best place for them to reach out if they have technical questions or things on complying?
Well, they can certainly, you know, MTI members can certainly reach out to myself or any one of us on the Technical Standards Committee, and if we don't know the answer, we'll get right to the committee, the CQI-9 committee, and throw it out in the committee meeting and get a response for all of our MTI members.
Sweet. So I think one thing to mention at this point, just so everybody knows, is as you're listening thing and you have comments you want to hear from other members on what's going on or get information, you can go out to the MTI website and click on sign in and go to the members only area and click into the technical standards group, or the AMEC Nadcap group, and you can post questions there, and members are really responsive. They'll get back within 24 hours and give you what you need to know. So really utilize that online presence to get information, because you literally have over 1,500 different professionals at your fingertips that can give you information: quality managers, owners, operators, executives, lots there for you. So, well, Bob, thank you very much for that update.
Yeah, great.
So now let's move into ASTM. I know, Ed, you've been very active at ASTM and some things. I know we got a couple of things going on in the indenture portable harness testing area. So what's going on over there?
One of the longest articles of discussion was a ballot for indentation, direct verification of indentation testing when your device doesn't meet ASTM E10, E18, or E384. And it's basically a generalized form of direct verification testing. So it's more of interest to the people who are going to manufacture portable testers that won't fall under the standard direct verification practices.
Right.
And they're hashing that stuff out. But part of that discussion was concern that the current data in E10 in particular, but also E18, relative to portable testers that meet those requirements, didn't show very good uniformity of results when they did it years ago. So ASTM has a call out for parties wanting to participate in an intra-laboratory study of the accuracy out in the field of portable testers that meet E10 or E18. And E10, there's not a whole lot of them.
Right.
Portable Burnell is one of them. E18, I believe there are portable Rockwell testers that actually put on a standard Rockwell minor and major load and measure the depth of penetration and all that. So they're looking for parties with that sort of equipment to participate in this interlaboratory study. They're looking for about a dozen participants. So they have a really good database to put into the standards. So that was the latest on the indentation hardness testing.
Yeah, because it's all about good data, as we're learning, especially from AMEC. So I know Doug Matson from Boeing had shot me a note and said that David Conley, who's in charge of that task force, was looking for more heat treaters. And I know we've had about a dozen respond. Yep. So anybody listening to this that wants to try and be a part of that study, we'd really appreciate you just email me directly at tom@heattreat.net. It's tom@heattreat.net, and let me know that you'd like to be a part of the ASM study, and I will forward your information to David Conley. He's loving it when we get people to be a part of this, because it gives them, the more people you participate, the more valid data you get, which can really hopefully make this spec do some really good things for everybody.
Yeah. Now, Tom, I do have the ASTM email that went out. I can forward that to you as well. It's the original one that they kicked out for this particular study, if it helps.
Yeah, if you can, and then I can post that on the website, and people can see that and see what's required, and then they can be able to respond appropriately. That'd be great.
Okay, good. I will do that.
Anything else on ASTM?
That's really it. I'm on the temperature measurement, but unfortunately, their meetings are scheduled at exactly the same time as indentation testing. So until things settle down in indentation hardness testing, I'll be going to those, and then once they do settle down, I'll switch interest to the temperature measurement.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Ed, for all that update. Mm-hmm. So now let's get into to one of the two. So they all kind of blend together. I want to get us in our discussions to try and keep them separate, but we're going to start with the Nadcap. And I know we'll blend into the AMEC committee, but let's start with Nadcap, man. Nadcap for 2 days was just in some sense, a fiery display in some cases. Lots of good active. I love lively discussion. You'd always get it at Nadcap for sure. So it was 2 days, and I know MTI held a meeting of about 30 people the first day of Nadcap, where we give them a chance to air their souls and talk about the things that are really concerning to them on the agenda, and we come up with hopefully some solutions. And then we held a reception the second night to give them a chance to follow up from the meeting. So Ed, I know you were there, and Bob Ferry, you were there as well. Talk about what went on day one and day two in Nadcap, some of the big key items.
Well, we day one for open meetings in the heat treat task group is the heat treat supplier sub team, and the last actually few years that's been soaked up with coming up with these general forms for calibration and uniformity surveys and SAT, and that effort has pretty much run its course. And I think TUS is yet to be published. Mm-hmm. No calibrations on the website. I don't think SAT's there yet either. And they should all be coming up soon, because I think that effort has pretty well run its course. Wilford did spend a lot of time talking about what's going on at Nadcap Management Council as it might affect suppliers, and there is a lot of big news going on there. I highly recommend that you go to the eAuditNet website, where they moved all the meeting minutes, because you can read for yourself what the various Nadcap Management Council subcommittees are doing. And there is an awful lot on the horizon. For most of us who aren't regular attendees, this stuff is kind of flying under the radar, and it's going to be an ugly surprise when it shows up. So go to eAuditNet and look up the meeting agendas and minutes, and spend some time reading them, because it's going to have an effect on how you plan to stay compliant in your Nadcap systems.
So either you or Bob Ferry, I mean, I know probably people are going, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get off here and go look at that. Is there anything in those that you could refer to that would say, these are the kind of things that you need to be looking forward to?
Well, one is this, it started off with the term unethical behavior issue. And as we learned in our meeting with Scott Clavon on Monday afternoon, it's really more a concern about fraudulent documentation. And it stems from the Kobe Steel incident in Japan, and I think there was one other in the U.S.
Yeah.
It was determined that testing houses had pretty much fabricated test results from whole cloth and passed them off on certificates of compliance. And it really concerned the whole aerospace community, and especially the primes. And so the primes came back through the Nadcap Management Council to PRI and said, what can we do within the Nadcap system to get some kind of early warning on whether we have fraudulent activity going on at suppliers. And so, which really gets into a very hard discussion to have because of the nature of the topic. So be prepared to see more discussion on this in the future, changes in the checklist, and training of auditors to look for the possibility of fraudulent documentation. The other one was the change in, what's the word? It was like an early warning system for problems at suppliers. And the implication is that if you have a major finding with product impact, you may be subject to further, much deeper scrutiny and possible loss of your merit status under certain conditions. And the details of that are getting hammered out in Nadcap Management Council. It will have an effect. I think probably have a bigger effect on some task groups than others. But it will change the landscape as regards maintaining merit. Then the other one is the common checklist, AC 7000. Nadcap Management Council wants to take all that front end stuff of every checklist and issue their own common checklist. So the task groups don't have to deal with the common checklist side of this thing. So the structure of our audit criteria is going to change probably by the end of next year.
Right, and that's going to address all the, like the 7102 checklists, all of them.
Yeah, all of the first two paragraphs basically of the root checklist. So things like, the name of the company, the size of the company, all that sort of stuff will be common to all checklists. Part of that, they want to get their arms around something called management of change. And if you are AS 9100, you're not a stranger to this. Management of change has gotten a lot of scrutiny, and it's always had a lot in the medical world. And the aerospace folks are just now catching up, and they're going to be paying a lot more attention to things like additional new equipment that didn't show up in the previous audit, or wholesale changes in process practices that normally an auditor would just go, okay, you change it, let's just audit the damn job and move along. They're going to want to know more about those changes, how you decided to make them, what the effect might be on their products, and so on. So those are some of the biggest changes that I can think of coming down the line. Bob, can you?
No, I think you hit on the big ones. And the one that you talked about with the early warning system, like if they find a finding, I mean, they're looking at sending out an advisory right away.
That's the word I couldn't. Supplier advisory was the term I was trying to think of. Yes. Yeah.
So they're looking at sending one of those out, immediately once they find something. They're going to send this advisory out, which, normally you'd have an opportunity to discuss what was going on, or what the auditor thought he saw or thinks he found, and let's really dig into this thing. Nadcap wants to just rifle it off just as an early warning announcement to all these primes, which could bring big problems for all of us heat treaters. So, so what Ed is saying about we've got to be on top of this. I certainly wasn't on top of it until I went to the Nadcap meeting, and then all of a sudden I'm like in shock that they're even thinking about doing this. So, we got to pay attention.
Yeah.
So listening to all that, what do you think are a couple of things, Ed or Bob or even Robert, listening in? What are a couple of things that you think heat treaters should really begin to shift in their mindset, given how some of these systematic changes are coming about, so they can begin to start thinking about it today? Because, like you said, you don't want to wait till the moment happens and you figure it out and it's too late. Is there any shift in thinking about approaching your audits that heat treaters need to be thinking through right now at this moment as we approach the next year?
Well, what do you think, Robert? Have any thoughts there?
Yes. The easiest thing for me to say to heat treaters out there is that when an Nadcap audit takes place, okay, what you have in writing is one of the things they're going to look at. So you need to be following your procedures to the letter. If not, they're going to tag you on that. That's one. Two, NADCAP, as everybody said, they're going to get tougher and tougher and tougher. All right. And technology changes. And there's a big push for some of the NADCAP folks to, if you've got a furnace that's, say, that's 20 years old, all right, and it doesn't have the state-of-the-art technology, well, there's a big push. Well, you need to get the state-of-the-art technology or it can't get NADCAP approved. I think they're heading that direction for that. So my thing would be to everybody is, stay on top of the art, man, when it comes to technology.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say as we lead into AMEC, I mean, I think going from analog paper to digital, wouldn't you all say that that's a big thing you need to be thinking through right now is how do we get to digital? Don't wait for it to pass because it's going to pass at some point in the future. How do we get to digital to now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was pretty apparent when we were in the NADCAP meeting, and there was a little discussion through the AMS 2750 section where they're truly focused on having everybody get to digital instrumentation. I know they're getting some pushback on that, and Ed can probably share some more information with us, but that is where it's going. So as you mentioned, Tom, if you guys can grab some capital and start changing out some instrumentation, it's going to be worth your effort to do it now rather than do it later.
Right. Well, and I think the other thing, Ed and Bob, that was talked about in that meeting, I know we were grateful to have Scott Clavin, the program director for NADCAP, take literally an hour and a half out of his day at the end of a long day of meetings, and he actually had to take, I think, a staff member, somebody to the hospital or go visit them later. But he's carved out an hour and a half for us from 6 to 7 to just talk about the issues that were pertinent to MTI members. And I know one of the things we talked about, going back to the post-audit survey we've been talking about a lot, a lot of people, they think they get great information on those post-audit surveys, but they're not. Our studies show that people are not telling the absolute truth on how those audits are performed because they can't deal with the end of their audit unless they get that in, and most people aren't sharing how the audit really went. So Scott came back with us and talked about they're going to go to their management team and talk about how they can better do the audit, potentially even maybe putting it at the end of the audit, but you can't get your final audit certificate until you've completed that survey, which would be, I think people would be more apt to be more honest in that role than having it. I always equate it, it's like going in and rating your professor before he's going to give you your final grade, before you grade your paper. So that was another big issue that was talked about, I think, that hopefully we'll come to some conclusions on. So anything else that you can feel, members, and I want you to know on the right-hand side there, we're going to get to Jason Howard's question here in just a little bit. If you have a question and you want to hear these guys, these engaged members' information, or just let members talk about it, type your questions in on the chat box on the right-hand side there. So is that anything else about NADCAP, gentlemen?
Well, the heat treat task group had a lot of discussion on many issues. They really didn't want to talk about AMS 2750F, so that discussion was pretty well scotched. And we are revising the 7102 checklist, and we're kind of holding that until the AC 7000 from the NADCAP Management Council comes out, because that'll affect how it's structured. But the 7102 is going to be expanded in areas where the questioning was weak, like magnesium alloys, beryllium copper alloys, and that sort of thing. And maybe be a little better organized for a better flow during the audit. And, it remains to be seen if that's actually going to work out. But they're making some attempt to capture, bolster some weak areas and better manage the flow of work in the audit itself. We talked about the brazing, the /1 checklist for brazing isn't really going to change, but AWS is publishing a new document called C.314, and it's going to be all on the testing that may be required on brazing. So if you do a lot of brazing, you do a lot of aerospace brazing, you may want to pay attention to the AWS website when they publish this document, because some of the aerospace subscribers might flow down requirements out of there for testing on their products that they don't currently get done now. And then
did you say somebody's flowing stuff down?
Well, it happens, believe it or not. Maybe less on purpose than.
I'm like, where'd I go? Did that happen?
it can happen occasionally. Yeah. So no, there's there are things moving along in the heat treat task group, but I don't know. I can't say any of it's like real earth shattering.
Right.
They're chronically short on auditors, and they finally attracted the attention of Nadcap Management Council, and they're kind of getting hounded to get an auditor base built back up. So expect to see new auditors out there as well.
Right.
Yeah, but didn't they say that they're trying to reach their goal is to get 130% of the required amount that they need?
Yeah, they've always had that. They just never meet it. I think we've had it in heat treat like 4 or 5 quarters out of the last 15 or 20. So yeah, they're chronically short in heat treat.
But who hires 130% of the people they need?
Well,
I don't.
Thankfully, they're contractors. So
oh, that's right.
They just need an approved contractor base that's 130% more than they might need.
Right.
That's all.
Always being overstaffed. Is anybody here overstaffed, by the way?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
yeah, I thought I'd audit in my spare time. Yeah.
Right. Yes. So anything else, Ed? You're a plethora of information today. You obviously took copious notes at the NADCAP meeting.
No, that's really all I have at the moment.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing from y'all is really members need to be really looking at their quality systems and being ready to embrace change because it's coming as it comes, and try and be on. I'd say try and be on these webcasts to hear what's changing as fast as it is, and then really look to be digital as much as possible and upgrade your equipment because they're going to really be pushing the demand that.
Yeah.
All right.
If you're 9100 approved, take a look at how many times the word ethical behavior is used in 9100, and maybe plan some kind of written policy on ethics and ethical behavior in your company, and then follow it, because that's one of the things they will be looking for when they finally get auditors trained up to start looking for fraudulent documents, is some kind of a practice or policy in place, a written policy.
Well, I think a big change that we saw with them is they went away from calling it unethical behavior to fraudulent activity. Because unethical behavior to people says that you think there's something wrong with me, and fraudulent activity means that somebody actually did something wrong, and we can prove that.
Yeah,
so I know
I
know they made a big switch in that, and they're going to. And from what I understand also is I know a lot of people are wondering, are they going to coach the auditors to try and identify unethical behavior? Because that's such a subjective thing. From what I understand, it's not going to be about judging whether somebody's unethical. It's going to be the question on the checklist will be, do you have an unethical behavior policy with your customers? It's a yes/no question. You either have it or you don't. So those are the kind of things members will be wanting to look at heat treaters is do you have the appropriate policies in place? Because that's what they're going to be judging is do you have it documented?
Yep.
Awesome.
Right.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, so we left the first half hour we devoted to one whole set of sections. The last half hour we devoted to the Gorilla 2750, the AMEC committee meeting. So let's jump into that. So Robert, I'm going to turn to you to talk about excluding 2750 because that's an animal all to itself. What happened on day one in Tampa at the AMEC committee meeting?
Okay, basically 2759/2 T comments, technical, whether it's technical or it's editorial, those kind of things. /3 was done the same way, /5, and then /7. Okay, so we got into a little bit of a discussion on that one, especially when it came to the snap tempering and the sub-zero freezing within 4 hours, all right? When you look at the specification, it's there, but it's in 2 different paragraphs. So clarification will be that it's going to read snap tempering / sub-zero freezing within 4 hours if normal tempering cannot be performed, snap temperature 250F to 300F. So now they're clarifying the comment that was in there previously. It was in 2 different paragraphs, but it wasn't a complete sentence. That makes sense. So that was being done to try to, clean that up. All right. And then we looked at 2770, reviewing T comments there. Nothing, really stood out there. As everybody just spoke about, NADCAP is putting a checklist together for the auditors to go through. Don't have a copy of that yet, but that's coming. And then we basically talked about the B19AB, the hot Islamic pressure.
Hipping, yeah.
Excuse me.
Hipping, yeah.
Thank you. There seem to be some legal issues here. Okay, one of the comments is this project is currently on hold in Committee B, pending a resolution of the United States Department of Commerce under the Exportation Administration Regulations, EAR. All right, 2B004. This draft needs to be reviewed to determine if it is to be published and if it violates the EAR. All right. So that's, I think it's going to put a few things on hold there until the, I'll call it the legal group, hashes out the comments on that one. All right. And then our good old famous one that we all talked about, 2750. Wow. A lot of T comments we went over, technical, as well as whether or not it is an editorial comment. And then a comment was brought up that roughly 70% of the heat treaters are not using old style paper recorders. Now, I don't know how accurate that is, but that was a comment that was brought up, meaning about new technology versus the old technology. So I think this is going to be an issue as time goes by about old style paper recorders. Okay, so it would be to everybody's interest. I know there's money involved and it's going to cost, but the quicker you get into the technology world, to be able to download stuff instead of relying on a piece of paper that could be damaged, and if that happens, then what do you do? Or if somebody forgets to write in the start temperature, time, and those things can be an issue in an audit. Right? So we really need, to think outside the 9 dots on that. Now, also on 2750, there's a lot of concern from a lot of different players in this industry about the changes in this pyrometry specification, from the thermocouples to the recording of the thermocouples, to if you've got a multi-cell type furnace, now you don't have a thermocouple that follows the load, so you don't have that. So it's open. This is going to continue to go on for quite a bit. We spent the second day all day going over 2750, and we still didn't get it all completed. If you have comments, please forward them forward so that we can bring them up at the next meeting in January to try to get this 2750 cleared up and moving forward. Because once we all agree and it goes out for voting and everybody says, okay, then you've got to go through the other 2 committees above that and get that done. So that could be another 120 to, or longer time to get that specification published. So that's something that we really need to work on.
So let's dig down a little bit in the weeds, man, because I know this was a highly debated. I mean, I thought the gloves were going to come off in some areas on this thing. It came unglued very quickly, which was kind of entertaining. It made for a fun, interactive, but a lot of discussion.
Fall asleep.
Right, for sure. I mean, the first 5 minutes in, you're like, oh, is this really going to happen? So it was great discussion. And so, Ed, I know this was your first meeting. I'm excited you were there, and I know you really hammered away at some of these issues, So I know there's things like the thermocouple usage, calibration, and partial pressure were 3 of the big items. I know MTI stuck its head out and said, look, we need to talk about this. So can you kind of review each of those areas, just kind of where it was at and where we kind of ended up at the end of the day?
Well, if you've had any exposure to the ballots that have come through, you know that reuse of non-expendable thermocouples is going to be pretty severely limited for base metal thermocouples in particular. And so not only are you going to be required to buy wire of pretty high accuracy, because everything's going to
special limits.
Wire, the tighter limits wire, but if they're base metal, they're going to be one and done. Mm-hmm. So and they're not relenting on it. I mean, we really hounded them hard, and they just weren't going to budge. And the response we kept getting is, well, you know, bring data to the table, bring data to the table. And sadly, I have to say I didn't have any data that I could bring to the table to defend sticking with standard limits. So just be forewarned, that's one part of this life that's likely not to change. We did manage, though, to get them to agree that on type J and E wire below 32 degrees Fahrenheit to allow people to buy standard limits wire, because if you look at ASTM E230, they make it pretty clear that oftentimes it's special limits just isn't available. What are you going to do? You're just not going to do freezing, or you're going to write a letter of dispensation to every customer you have?
Yeah.
So when I put that up, they seem to be willing to relent at least on that part. So wire is going to be more expensive because it'll be all special limits, and your base metals above 500 are pretty much one and done. Non-expendables do have multiple uses. Of course, you have to track for that by both date and number of uses and temperature. But I mean, those are things, if you're a Nadcap supplier, you're probably doing all that stuff already. We also did get calibration of timing devices. We had a discussion there. And before, they were looking to make that annual requirement. And it looks like they might relent and make it 2 years, because as it turns out, a lot of times when you buy a timing device with a certificate of accuracy, it's a 2-year cycle that's provided by the maker of the product. So they were willing to give a little on that.
Yes.
Let's see. There was a paragraph in there about multi-zone furnaces under 225 cubic feet could be considered one qualified hot zone unless any one dimension was 2 times the smallest dimension of the qualified hot zone, which means that if you have a furnace with an aspect ratio greater than 2 to 1 anywhere, you are probably going to have to resize your qualified hot zone to meet this, what I considered a relatively artificial requirement. So we argued that down. I think they're going to change that to 3 times, so we don't have to go back and take those furnaces and re-engineer the hot zones to meet basically an artificial requirement. It was intended to capture tube furnaces and the like. And 2 to 1 is not a tube furnace by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
So there was, we had a discussion about some of the requirements for SAT waiver. They've really made that much more difficult to do. If you're an aluminum processor, the TUS recovery times came out of 2770 a couple revisions ago, and they were going to be deferred to 2750. Which never happened. So the folks who've been in aluminum have been kind of in this limbo about recovery time, and they're going to be opening up a limited scope ballot to 2770 to get that back in, because the 2750 committee said we never had an intention of putting recovery time in our spec. It should have always stayed in 2770. So there's a little back and forth there. Let's see.
Did you refer to partial pressure, though?
Pardon?
Partial pressure.
Yeah, so partial pressure. The current ballot revision or draft has annual requirement to do, and it says literally an additional survey with a partial pressure. And when me and Don Lowry or Lohman from Continental brought up, that meant, well, let's say you have a furnace, you're doing 4 surveys a year, you got to do a 5th one for partial pressure, because it says in addition to.
In addition to, right.
And the committee was all flabbergasted that we interpreted. Don't write additional then. Just
right.
You can substitute 1 to be partial pressure. So they were going to go back and change that language. We did try to argue that this should be an episodic requirement. That is, partial pressure systems are designed and built as permanent hardware on your vacuum furnace. And unless something changes there, you should just have to do it once to demonstrate it works. And unless you change it, don't have to do it again. And if you do change it, document the change, document the survey, and you're done. They didn't even want to talk about that, which is just preposterous, but that's okay. That's what they want. At least we got them to, let us clarify the additional part of the language, which
right.
Really it wasn't.
Right, but the concern there also is that you know, now they're going to they're going to get into, well, what's the partial pressure that you have to do your survey at, right?
Yes.
Well, yeah. So currently, it is just a broad requirement to do a partial pressure survey,
Right.
a pressure that you use in your operation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be really important that whatever procedure you write to cover that covers all the details, and when it gets audited, you can demonstrate that you meet whatever it is you said about partial pressures in any given furnace. So it's going to lean hard on you writing your process and then you complying with your process.
Yeah. Bingo.
Right?
Key statement right there. Yes.
Yep.
Right.
So, and there was, well, what else was there here? Special limits on noble wire.
Right.
Yeah, okay. They're not going to make any changes there. Let's see, rant on Titan. I'm just looking at my notes real quick. Pardon me. There was a lot of editorial stuff. Now, what I have to say, what we did at AMEC regarding 2750 was we really weren't writing a new draft. We were reviewing the comments from the committee above us, which is Committee B.
Yes.
And Committee B is full of chem process people mostly. I don't know how many heat treaters are up there, but apparently not many. And so they were the ones who were actually most upset about the move to digital recorders. Marcel Cooperman, when he got onto this committee that was going to draft F, took a year and he surveyed all his, like 700 some audits to see who was still using paper and who wasn't. And it turned out about 3/4 of the heat treaters are not using paper. And so we're thinking the chem process people still are. And that's why they're so unhappy about it. So I don't know if I don't know how they're going to resolve it at their level, but somebody's going to have a way to deal with it.
Right.
But anyways, the purpose of the discussion at AMEC on 2750 in Tampa was to review the comments made by Committee B, particularly the technical comments, and reply with recommendations on how they might resolve them. So we, as a general population, we're not going to see another draft of this document unless, well, we do have a 28-day limited scope ballot coming up on very specific paragraphs, and that's it. Otherwise, we got to wait till Committee B gets together. What is it, March? Mm-hmm. They review all the stuff we recommended here in November. Then they decide what they resolve. Then they do a draft. It'll go out for ballot. So by the time this thing gets published, we're going to be well into the summer of 2020.
Oh, easily.
Right.
Yeah. All right. I mean, Robert, you probably know better than I.
I mean, in January, we're going to probably try to refine a few things, but you're right. The two different committees above us is loaded dice.
Yep, exactly.
Which helps people breathe because it was looking like it was going to be law by the end of the year.
Right.
Yeah.
That was the push.
Yeah.
So people can at least breathe and take a while. But, my thing, Ed, is hats off to, I know, Bob, you comment a lot on these things, and hats off to you for raising the questions. And Ed, I know this was your first AMEC meeting, and I guess I want to ask you a question. Speaking to people that are out there listening to this, I mean, a lot of people think that these specs are designed by engineers in the heavens and, primes, and they just don't realize that the specs are really driven by heat treaters just like them in the process. And I know that it was great to have, if I sit in a room of 30, I mean, you experience this, if you go to this room of 35 people in the room, at least 50% of the crowd are MTI commercial heat treaters who wake up and heat treat metal just like you do every single day. And so I guess I'd want to have you just take a few moments and express your thoughts to anybody out there listening. Should I get involved in AMEC? Because, I mean, it is the body that writes the rules that you're going to get audited to by Nadcap. And so to sit there and have a debate and be able to push through not your own agenda, but what's good law for the land for these specs is really right. So I mean, share with everybody what your perspective was and your encouragement. Should they get involved or not?
Sure. So I mean, I've been writing to ballot comments for 35 years, and by and large, I have to say, I mean, if I ever got a response back, it's hard to recall. And whenever you look at the meeting notes, everything was non-persuasive. Well, it turns out that you pretty much have to be there to not become non-persuasive.
Right.
Unless you can write a thesis in your commentary and someone will actually take the time to read it and understand it and know what it is you're saying and why you are making your statement and that it has grounds to be listened to, you got to be there to do that. And it really hit me when I got there and I was making comments about some of the concerns I had. Naturally, I'm going there on Solar's behest, of course. But this group really exists for the industry at large. So when you sign on, you're signing on as an individual claiming to be relatively expert in the field in support of the industry. And there are things in here that are going to be very painful for the whole industry, not just Solar, not just FPM,
Right.
but all of us are going to be paying a hard price to comply. And the more heat treaters, that users, I should say, that show up there and explain why some of these things aren't such a good idea, although they may look that way on first read, then maybe we'll have our hand on the tiller and we can steer the ship a little bit better than it has been steered in the past.
Yes.
I fully intend to add AMEC meetings to my roster of travel and participation, because you're right. This is where the law gets written that you're going to be audited to. And if you don't have a seat at the table, no one really, they just aren't going to listen to you. And that's a sad thing.
Yeah, we need more members. There's no argument about that.
Yeah.
And the knowledge that you have can be shared. Now, as the comment was made, they don't always agree, but they are willing to listen.
Yeah.
Okay. And just a side note, okay, we're looking right now at a 54-page specification. All right. And we're not done yet.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on with this spec.
Oh, there is. It's a great deal going on.
Well, and I think the key for people to listening say, should I get involved, is kind of the requirement since I've been at AMEC for 7 years is they have 4 meetings a year. They'd like you to at least commit that you can come to 3 of them. January is always on the West Coast in Carmel. Now that MTI's offices are in Nashville, it looks like in May we'll do one in Nashville. In April, they're going to be doing it in Milwaukee next year, up around ECM, USA. And then the last one will be in Phoenix at the Honeywell plant. So that kind of gives you a sense of where the meetings are and when they are. They're in January, May, July, and November. And you got to be willing to come to 3 of those meetings each year. And you can't just sit in the room. They want you to get engaged and involved and actually put your name on one of the specs and be a part of the review process. So if you hold those elements, I ask any of you, because I usually connect you with the chair, Lee Gerhardt from Moog Aerospace. Send me an email at tom@heattreat.net. Say, Tom, I'd like to consider talking, get more information. I'll handle that with you. And then if you, after talking with me, say, hey, I'd really like to move forward and look and do this, then I'll connect you with Lee Gerhardt, the chairman, and see. Because what they don't want is a blossoming, big, huge committee that's just people in the room listening. They want a committee of people that are come to work. And that's not cut out for everybody. So, but if you're willing to do those things, and there's some slots available, we'd love to hear from you and love to get you involved. It's a great committee to be working with. And there's some really good, passionate people in there. That's the one thing I love about it. There's 2 sides to every argument pretty much, and they're passionate about what's right or wrong. And, it's a democratic process. They voted up or down like anything else. So it's not somebody with an agenda. It's a truly democratic process. But yeah, we appreciate you making that leap and coming and experiencing that, because I think you were a big voice. I know you had a voice of some of the things Bob Ferry has always talked about. And I think you were able to influence and some reasonableness to the process.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. To that, if we look at for a moment, AMS 2801, which is the heat treatment of titanium alloys. One of the things that came up is this document needs a new sponsor, which means somebody has retired or walked away from it. Okay, so having a new sponsor is a good thing. AMEC 18 AC. We need a new sponsor. All right. And there's another one, I believe. Real quick, I'm looking here. To the point is, the more people that come in and get involved, the faster we'll get some specifications put together. Doesn't mean we'll get them through all the different committees quicker, but at least we won't sit and argue maybe for a year on one spec before it goes to a committee. We can get something accomplished, if that makes sense to everybody.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
by the way, 2801 does have a new sponsor. Don Jordan picked that up.
Oh, did he?
Yep. So that'll get back on the move.
Missed that.
Yep.
Robert?
All right. So anything else from any of you on anything to do with technical specifications? Any words of wisdom? Anything people need to be looking out for? What's your last words for the heat treat community?
Well, do what you say, say what you do.
Yeah. And don't be afraid of changes, even though, there's money that's tied to upgrading to newer equipment. But at the same time, if you do it, then there's going to be less findings by Nadcap because you're not with the state of the art, or you are with the state of the art. So the more you're into the other direction, the more Nadcap's going to look for things to write you up on.
Yeah. And I just think that you just need to stay diligent and pay attention to all the new specifications that are as they're released.
Yes.
And pay attention to what we're trying to do here on the Technical Standards Committee and try to get some of the word out. And if you have any questions out there ahead of time, if you heard something, send it into the MTI and Tom will get it to one of us and we'll get you an answer. But that's about the only way that you're going to be able to stay up on what's going on out there.
Yes. Yeah, and my big thing is if you have a question in any capacity, go out to MTI's website, heattreat.net, sign in, click the post discussion question in the Get Connected box, and just post a question to the open forum. It's got over 1,500 people in there. People respond. People know what you need to know already, and you can tap into the wealth of knowledge out there in the marketplace, like Ed and Bob and Robert out there. So, all right, gentlemen. Well, hey, I thank you so much for your time today. We're getting up to 2 o'clock Eastern time or Central time now that we're in Central. But I just want to thank everybody for listening in today. And put December 17th on your calendar and spread the word in your organizations. We're going to have Nick Espinosa, who was at the fall meeting in Vancouver, who's going to come talk about cybersecurity. Huge issue. And I mean, people could not get enough of him. And for that 1 hour is going to be so much information that you're going to want to know to protect your data, protect your customers, and protect yourself from being hacked. So put December 17th at 2 o'clock Eastern time on your calendar. Look out for the news. Thank you so much for listening today. I'm Tom Morrison. You're not just strong, you're MTI strong, my friends. Have a great day.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Tom. Take care all. Bye.
Bye.